The afternoon sun was soft and low, painting the small town of Willow Creek in golden shadow. School had just ended, and children spilled out onto Maple Street, laughing, running, the air filled with the smell of baked bread from the nearby bakery. But amid all the noise and color, a small figure stood apart. Her name was Lily Parker, 16 years old, thin, dressed in a faded denim jacket that was 2 sizes too big. Her backpack was torn at the corner, and her shoes had lost their color long ago. She walked home slowly, counting every step, because she didn't like reaching home too early. Home was small, cold, silent. As she reached the main crosswalk, she noticed an elderly woman standing on the opposite side. The woman looked lost, a wool coat draped over her shoulders, a cane trembling in her hand. Cars rushed past, horns blaring, the signal blinking red. People kept walking around her, eyes glued to their phones. But Lily stopped. She watched the woman's lips move, asking for help maybe, but no one heard. Without thinking twice, Lily dropped her backpack, ran across the street, and gently took the woman's hand. "Don't worry, ma'am," she said softly. "I'll help you." The old lady smiled faintly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're an angel, child." Lily laughed quietly. "I wish." They crossed slowly, each step careful, the world around them fading into quiet focus. When they reached the other side, the woman turned to her and said, "What's your name, dear?" "Lily." The woman looked at her deeply, as if memorizing her face. "Lily, you remind me of someone I once knew." Lily smiled shyly, nodded, and picked up her backpack. "Take care, ma'am." But as she started to walk away, the old woman called out, "Thank you, Lily Parker." Lily froze. She hadn't told her last name. When she turned back, the woman was gone, as if the crowd had swallowed her whole. Only her cane leaned against the nearby lamppost, glistening in the evening light. Lily looked around, confused, but the woman had vanished. For some reason she couldn't explain, her heart felt heavy, yet warm. She picked up the cane and placed it on the sidewalk. Then she walked home under the setting sun, unaware that this small act of kindness, this single moment, was about to rewrite the rest of her life. Because sometimes fate remembers the smallest gestures, and love hides behind the strangest goodbyes. The night after the crosswalk felt strangely restless. The wind outside whispered against the thin walls of Lily's small home, carrying the faint scent of rain. She sat by the window, staring at the streetlight flickering across the cracked pavement. The image of the old woman wouldn't leave her mind. That soft smile, those pale eyes that had looked at her like she knew her. Beside Lily's bed, leaning against the wall, was the cane she had picked up before going home. She'd meant to drop it off at the police station, but somehow she couldn't. It felt wrong to let it go. There was something strange about it. Old but elegant, polished dark wood, with an ivory handle carved into the shape of a rose. As she turned it over in her hands, the base made a faint clicking sound. She frowned. The cane wasn't just heavy, it was hollow. Her curiosity sharpened. She twisted the handle slowly, and it gave way, revealing a hidden compartment inside. Her breath caught. Inside the hollow shaft was a small, rolled-up note tied with a golden thread. Hands trembling, Lily untied it and unrolled the paper. The handwriting was delicate, flowing, old-fashioned, like something from another time. It read, "To the one who stopped, kindness never walks alone. When the roses bloom again, come find me at 12 Willow Lane." Lily's eyes widened. 12 Willow Lane. She knew that address. Everyone in town did. It was the old Harrington estate, a huge mansion at the edge of town that had been empty for years. People said it belonged to a rich widow who'd vanished long ago. Some said she'd died. Others said she moved away quietly, leaving the house locked and forgotten. Lily felt her heart race. She looked out the window, where the moonlight spilled through the clouds, silvering the wet streets. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to leave the note and cane where they were. But another part, the one that had stopped in the middle of a busy road for a stranger, whispered, "Go." The next morning, before school, Lily packed the cane and note into her backpack and started walking. The air was crisp, the trees swaying gently as autumn leaves crunched beneath her shoes. The streets grew quieter the closer she got to the edge of town, and then she saw it, the mansion. It stood behind iron gates, tall and haunting, covered in ivy and silence. The windows were dark, the paint chipped, the garden overgrown, but there was beauty in its loneliness, the kind of beauty that carried memories. Lily pushed the gate. It creaked open. Inside the yard, she noticed something strange. Amidst the fallen leaves, a single rosebush stood near the porch, and somehow, impossibly, it was blooming. Bright red petals glowing against the gray of the morning. Her breath hitched. When the roses bloom again, come find me. Heart pounding, she walked closer. The cane in her hand felt warm, alive almost, as if guiding her. She climbed the porch steps and knocked. Once, twice, silence. But then, the door creaked open on its own. A gust of air swept through the hallway, carrying the faintest smell of lavender and old books. Dust floated in the sunlight pouring through cracked windows. Lily stepped inside cautiously, her footsteps echoing softly. The house wasn't empty. It was filled with traces of a life once lived. Framed paintings, shelves lined with faded photographs, a piano in the corner covered in dust but still standing proud. She called out softly, "Hello? Is anyone here?" No answer, only the faint ticking of an old grandfather clock. She walked further inside, following her instinct. On the dining table lay an envelope, untouched, its seal marked with a rose. It had her name written on it, Lily Parker. Her pulse quickened. She tore it open. "If you're reading this, my dear, then fate has done what it was meant to. I've waited a long time for kindness to find its way back to this house. Come again tomorrow. The caretaker will be expecting you. M.H." Lily read it twice, her mind spinning. Who was M.H.? How did this person know her name? And what did fate have to do with any of it? But more than confusion, what she felt most was a pull. Something inside her told her this wasn't coincidence, that somehow the old lady she'd helped and this mansion were pieces of the same forgotten story. As she stepped outside, the morning sunlight broke through the clouds, landing gently on the rosebush. The petals shimmered like they were whispering something only the kind-hearted could hear. Lily took one last look at the mansion and whispered, "Okay, I'll come back tomorrow." And as she walked away, the wind picked up softly, brushing against the porch, moving the curtain in the upstairs window. If someone had been watching closely, they would have seen it, the faint silhouette of the old woman standing behind the glass, smiling, waiting. The next morning arrived wrapped in mist. The streets of Willow Creek were quiet, the air damp and heavy with the scent of wet leaves. Lily's hands trembled as she held the cane, the same one that had somehow carried her into this strange story she couldn't yet understand. She hadn't told anyone where she was going. Something about this felt too private, too sacred to explain. When she reached the old Harrington mansion again, the iron gate was already open. The rosebush near the porch looked even brighter today, drops of dew glimmering like tiny stars. A light breeze carried the faint echo of wind chimes from somewhere deep inside the house. Lily hesitated at the door, that same heavy wooden door that had opened on its own yesterday. She knocked softly. This time, footsteps answered, slow, deliberate. Then the door opened, and an elderly man stood before her. He was tall and thin, his silver hair neatly combed back, wearing a dark vest and a kind but weary expression. His eyes, calm and observant, studied her carefully. "You must be Lily Parker," he said. Lily froze. "How do you know my name?" The man smiled faintly. "Because she told me you'd come." "She?" Lily whispered. "You mean the old woman?" The man nodded slowly. "Mrs. Harrington, Margaret Harrington. She passed away 3 months ago." Lily's stomach dropped. "Passed away? But I just saw her yesterday at the crosswalk. She was alive." The man's gaze softened, as though he had expected those words. He stepped aside. "Come in, child." The house smelled of lavender and thyme. Dust danced in the beams of sunlight cutting through the draped windows. The floor creaked softly beneath her feet. On one wall, portraits hung in gold frames, generations of Harringtons, faces from another century. The man gestured toward the piano room. "Mrs. Harrington spoke about you often, said you reminded her of someone, her daughter Clara. She lost her long ago." Lily frowned. "But I never met her before. How could she talk about me?" The caretaker gave a faint, knowing smile. "Mrs. Harrington believed in second chances, in people crossing paths for a reason." He paused, then added, "Before she passed, she left instructions, very specific ones. She said, when the roses bloom again, the girl will come. Let her in." Lily's heart pounded. "What does she want from me?" Instead of answering, the man led her toward the grand staircase, each step echoing through the stillness. They reached the top floor, where the air felt thicker, quieter. He stopped outside a wooden door with a brass plaque that read, "Margaret Harrington, Study." He turned the handle. Inside, the room was like a frozen memory. Bookshelves lining every wall, a writing desk near the window, and a faint scent of perfume lingering in the air. On the desk sat an envelope sealed with the same rose emblem she had seen before. The caretaker handed it to her. "She left this for you." Lily sat down and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in the same elegant handwriting. "My dear Lily, if you are reading this, it means my faith was not in vain. I once lost my daughter to the cruelty of fate, a daughter with your same eyes, your same kindness. I searched for her in every face I met, but never found her again, until the day you stopped to help me cross that road. You reminded me what love looks like when it asks for nothing in return. Return tomorrow at dusk. Bring the cane. There is something here that belongs to you. Margaret Harrington." Lily's hands shook as she read the final words. She looked up at the caretaker, who was watching her with quiet understanding. "Something that belongs to me?" she whispered. He nodded. "Yes, and I think it's time you knew. Mrs. Harrington wasn't just waiting for anyone, Lily. She was waiting for you." A storm began to rumble outside, thunder rolling softly through the hills. Lily turned toward the window, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw her again. The same old woman, standing under the rosebush, smiling gently through the rain. Lily blinked. She was gone. But the cane, the same one that had started it all, glowed faintly under the dim light, as if the story it carried was still unfolding. The mansion seemed to breathe. The air felt alive, and deep inside, Lily knew this was only the beginning. Dusk fell like a slow whisper over Willow Creek. The air was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth and rose petals. Lily stood once again before the Harrington mansion, the cane clutched tightly in her hand, the letter folded safely in her jacket pocket. The sky was streaked with violet and silver, and the world felt caught between light and darkness. The perfect hour for secrets to wake. The iron gates creaked open without her touch. As she stepped inside, the wind stirred softly through the rosebush near the porch. One single red petal drifted down and landed on her shoe, as if welcoming her back. Inside, the house was quieter than before. Even the ticking of the grandfather clock seemed slower, heavier. The caretaker was waiting near the base of the stairs holding a lantern. "You came," he said with a faint smile. "She told me to," Lily replied softly, her eyes scanning the dim hallway. "She said something here belongs to me." The caretaker nodded. "Then it's time you see what she left behind." He led her up the grand staircase once more, but this time, instead of the study, he turned toward the far end of the hallway, a part of the house Lily hadn't noticed before. A faded painting hung on the wall, a young woman in a white dress, holding a rose. The resemblance was uncanny. She looked almost like Lily. Lily stopped. "Who is that?" "Clara," the caretaker said quietly. "Mrs. Harrington's daughter." Her chest tightened. "She looks like you," he finished. "Yes, that's what Mrs. Harrington thought too." He reached behind the painting and pressed against the wall. A soft click echoed through the corridor, and part of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow, hidden staircase descending into the darkness below. Lily froze. "What is this?" "Her secret," he said simply, "and yours to discover." The caretaker handed her the lantern. "Go on, I'll be right behind you." The steps creaked under her feet as she descended. The air grew cooler, scented faintly of old wood and dust. When they reached the bottom, she found herself in a small room, untouched by time. Shelves lined the walls filled with photo albums, letters and boxes wrapped in silk ribbons. At the center stood a glass cabinet. Inside, framed by soft candlelight, was a photograph of Mrs. Harrington and a little girl, maybe 5 years old, holding the same cane Lily now carried. She stepped closer, heart racing. The little girl's smile, her brown hair, the sparkle in her eyes. It could have been Lily herself. "That's Clara," the caretaker murmured behind her. "She disappeared when she was your age. No one ever found her." Lily turned slowly, confusion swirling in her voice. "But how could Mrs. Harrington think I was her?" He sighed. "Sometimes grief makes people see what their hearts need to see. But in Mrs. Harrington's case, it wasn't just hope, it was belief. She always said one day, the kindness she lost would return. Maybe not in the same form, but through the same soul." Lily looked down at the cane in her trembling hands. "You mean she thought I was Clara's spirit reborn?" he finished softly. "And when you helped her cross that road, she felt it. The same gentleness, the same courage." Lily's eyes stung with tears. "That's impossible." "Maybe," the caretaker said, "but she believed in things that can't be measured. Kindness, destiny, second chances." Lily set the lantern on the cabinet and noticed something strange about the photograph's frame. It had a small rose emblem carved into it, just like the cane. On instinct, she pressed the rose. A tiny compartment opened at the bottom of the frame, revealing a folded deed, old but official looking. Her name was on it, Lily Parker. Underneath, in elegant cursive, "The Harrington estate, to be inherited by the girl who carries the cane and the heart of my daughter." Lily gasped. "She left the house to me." Lily gasped. "She left the house to me." The caretaker nodded slowly, tears glimmering in his eyes. "She said this mansion should belong to kindness again." Thunder rolled outside, soft and distant. Lily stood there, trembling, speechless, her heart pounding between disbelief and awe. The weight of everything, her struggles, her loneliness, her one small act of kindness, it all seemed to lead here, to this moment. The caretaker placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You see, Lily, some people repay love with money, but Mrs. Harrington, she repaid it with faith." Lily looked around the secret room, the photos, the letters, the traces of two lives intertwined across time, and whispered, "She found me, even after she was gone." The old man nodded, "Because love never really leaves, child. It just finds new hands to hold." Lily turned toward the photograph one last time. The candlelight flickered, and for the briefest moment, she saw Mrs. Harrington standing beside her in the reflection of the glass, smiling, eyes filled with peace. And as a soft wind swept through the hidden room, the roses outside began to bloom again. Morning came quietly to Willow Creek, carrying with it the gentle scent of roses and rain-soaked wood. The mansion stood bathed in golden light, no longer haunting, but alive, like it had finally exhaled after years of silence. Yet Lily barely slept. Her mind replayed everything. The hidden room, the photograph, her name on the deed. It didn't feel real. By noon, she found herself standing outside the law office downtown, a modest brick building with ivy creeping up the sides. The caretaker had told her that Mrs. Harrington's lawyer had one final letter sealed away, to be given only to Lily Parker. She hesitated before stepping inside. The bell above the door chimed softly. Behind a large oak desk sat a man in his 60s, gray suit, round glasses and kind eyes that seemed to know things before they were spoken. "You must be Miss Parker," he said gently, rising to greet her. "I've been expecting you." Lily clutched the cane tighter. "Mrs. Harrington, she mentioned a letter." He nodded, walking to a locked cabinet. "She prepared it herself years ago, said she'd know when to have it delivered." He pulled out a cream envelope sealed with a rose wax emblem and placed it on the desk. "She asked me to read it, only if you insisted. Otherwise, she said you'd know when you were ready." Lily stared at it for a long moment, her heartbeat filling the silence. "I want to read it myself." The lawyer smiled faintly. "Then I'll give you privacy." When he left the room, Lily sat down, her hands trembling as she broke the seal. The faint scent of lavender drifted from the paper, the same scent that had lingered through the mansion halls. The handwriting was elegant, familiar. "My dear Lily, if you are reading this, I am gone, but I trust fate did what I could not. You may wonder why I left my home, my memories, and everything I owned to a stranger, but you were never a stranger to me." Lily blinked, tears already gathering. "Years ago, I lost my daughter, Clara. She was my world, bright, kind, endlessly curious. But more than anything, she believed in people. She once told me that if she ever left this world too soon, she'd find her way back, not through riches, not through fame, but through kindness. On the day you stopped to help me cross the road, I looked into your eyes and saw hers, the same warmth, the same heart. For a moment, time folded, and I felt like a mother again." Lily covered her mouth, a sob caught in her throat. "You did not save an old woman that day, Lily. You saved a memory that had been fading. I knew then that my home, my legacy, belonged not to blood, but to spirit, to those who carry love without asking for return. This house was built with wealth, but forgotten by heart. You, my dear, brought the heart back. Within these walls, may you find not luxury, but belonging. Take care of the roses. They bloom only for love that is remembered. And if ever you feel lost, look toward the window at dawn. That's where I'll be, watching the sunrise with you." The last words blurred as tears streamed down Lily's cheeks. She pressed the paper to her chest, breathing shakily. When the lawyer returned quietly, he didn't speak. He simply watched the emotion in her eyes. "She spoke of you often," he said softly. "Said she felt at peace knowing the house would have laughter again." Lily wiped her tears, her voice trembling. "She saw something in me I didn't even see in myself." The lawyer nodded. "That was her gift, seeing hearts, not faces." When Lily left the office, the afternoon sun had broken through the clouds. She walked down the cobblestone street, the cane in her hand gleaming faintly in the light. She looked up toward the distant hill where the mansion stood, her new home, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel small. That night, she sat by the window in the grand piano room, letter beside her, candle flickering. Outside, the roses swayed in the breeze, their petals catching moonlight like small flames. And for a fleeting second, through the reflection of the glass, she saw Mrs. Harrington standing in the garden, smiling, peaceful, before fading into the mist. Lily whispered through her tears, "Thank you for finding me." Outside, a single rose bloomed brighter than the rest, as if answering her back, because some promises don't end with goodbye. The first few nights inside the Harrington mansion felt like living inside a dream she couldn't wake from, both beautiful and strange. Every hallway whispered her name. Every room carried a breath of memory. Lily would wake up to the sound of soft footsteps, or maybe just the creak of the old wood, and for a second, she'd imagine Mrs. Harrington walking beside her, smiling that quiet, knowing smile. The caretaker had moved to a small guest cottage nearby, insisting that Lily needed space to let the house breathe again, and she did. She wandered through rooms that smelled of books and rain, touched velvet curtains faded by time, and discovered that every corner seemed to wait for her, as if the mansion itself had been holding its breath for years. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the world in amber and shadow, Lily sat in the study, the same room where she'd first found the letter. The fire crackled softly. Her eyes wandered to the shelf behind the desk, where a row of old journals sat, their leather covers cracked but cared for. She pulled one out. On the front, engraved in gold letters, were the words, Clara, Summer, 1962. Her heart skipped. Clara. She opened it carefully. Inside were sketches of flowers, pressed rose petals, and tiny poems written in a child's hand. But the last few pages were different. The handwriting had changed. Frantic, uneven. Mama says we're leaving for the city tomorrow, but I don't want to go. The house keeps whispering. It says stay. It says someone will come one day, someone kind, someone who'll bring the light back. I think the house is lonely. Lily's fingers trembled over the ink. The next page was blank, except for one faint rose emblem drawn in the corner, identical to the one on her cane. Suddenly, a soft creak echoed through the room. The window fluttered open, though the air outside was still. Lily turned. The candlelight flickered, shadows shifting. Then, behind the old bookshelf, she heard something, a hollow knock. She leaned closer, pressing her ear to the wood. The sound came again, steady, rhythmic. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Heart pounding, she set the journal aside and pushed gently against the shelf. It didn't move. Then she noticed one of the books, A Tale of Two Cities, and was sticking out slightly more than the others. She pulled it. With a slow click, the bookshelf slid open to reveal a narrow, hidden hallway lit by a faint golden glow. Her breath caught. Not again, she whispered. Inside, the passage smelled of old roses and candle wax. The walls were lined with paintings, unfinished, ghostly faces, half drawn, half erased. At the very end, a small wooden door stood slightly ajar. She stepped closer, the floor creaking under her feet. When she pushed it open, she found a tiny room, barely large enough for a bed and a desk. Dust covered everything, but it was clear someone had once lived there. On the wall above the bed, carved into the wood, were the words, "Kindness is the only key." Lily's throat tightened. She looked down at the desk. There lay an old photograph, its edges curled with time. It showed Mrs. Harrington, younger, sitting in that same room, holding a small girl on her lap, Clara, and behind them, almost invisible at first glance, was the open door of the very same passage Lily had just walked through. A chill ran down her spine. She picked up the photograph and turned it over. On the back, in delicate handwriting, "To the one who finds this, you are the ending Clara never had." Her hands shook. The firelight from the study behind her flickered brighter for a moment, as if the house itself was listening. Then, faintly, so faintly she thought she imagined it, a voice echoed down the hall. "Thank you, Lily." The sound was soft, childlike, filled with peace. She froze, heart racing, but there was no one there, only the scent of roses and the quiet warmth that wrapped around her like an embrace. For the first time, Lily didn't feel afraid of the mansion. She felt connected, as if the house had finally told her its last secret. She stood in the doorway, whispering into the dim corridor, "You're welcome, Clara." Outside, thunder rolled softly across the sky, and for a moment, just a moment, the entire house seemed to sigh, like it had finally found rest. And when Lily walked back into the study, the journal still open on the desk, she noticed one final message had appeared on the blank page, written in the faintest ink, as if by invisible hands. "The roses will bloom again." Lily smiled through her tears, whispering, "Yes, they already have." The wind outside carried the scent of roses through the open window, and for the first time since the day she met Mrs. Harrington, Lily felt truly at home. The next morning, Willow Creek awoke under a sky of soft silver clouds. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like wet roses and quiet secrets. Inside the Harrington mansion, the golden light from the tall windows spilled across the marble floors, wrapping everything in warmth. For the first time, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt alive. Lily woke early, the echoes of last night still drifting in her mind. The hidden room, the whisper, Clara's message. It all felt too real to be a dream. She made herself a cup of tea in the old kitchen, the same one that must have once been filled with the laughter of servants and the aroma of fresh bread. The kettle hissed softly, the sound grounding her back into the present. As she walked through the hallway, her reflection caught in a large antique mirror near the staircase. It was beautifully ornate, its edges carved with roses and vines, tarnished with time but still gleaming faintly in the morning light. She stopped, looking at her reflection. For a moment, she thought she saw someone standing behind her, a soft blur, a shape in white. But when she turned, no one was there. Her heart raced. She took a step closer, eyes locked on the mirror. The reflection flickered again, this time clearer. It wasn't her. It was Clara, a little girl, around 10 years old, wearing a white dress, her brown hair tied with a ribbon. She was smiling. Not hauntingly, but kindly. Lily's breath hitched. The girl lifted her hand in the reflection and touched the glass, and without thinking, Lily did the same. The moment her fingers met the cold surface, the mirror shimmered faintly, like ripples in water. A small metallic sound followed, and a hidden latch at the side of the mirror clicked open. Lily stepped back, startled. She pulled the mirror slightly, and behind it, a small compartment revealed itself, dusty, forgotten. Inside was an envelope sealed in red wax with the same rose emblem. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a short letter, written in Mrs. Harrington's hand. "My dear Lily, if you've come this far, you've found what most never could, not because it was hidden, but because it required a heart pure enough to see. This mirror was Clara's favorite. She used to say it showed not just faces, but souls. There is one last thing you must know. Clara never left this house by choice. On the night we were to move, she vanished. The storm took her, and my heart with her. But the house kept her memory, her laughter, her kindness, and it waited for someone who carried the same light. That someone was you." Tears welled in Lily's eyes as she read on. "The house was never cursed, my dear. It was grieving, and grief, like love, never truly fades. You didn't just inherit my home, you inherited its peace. Promise me this, Lily. Fill these halls with life again. Open its doors to those who need warmth, as you once needed it. Let kindness live here once more. And when you do, the roses will bloom forever." At the bottom, in faded ink, was one final line. "Love never dies, it only changes hands." Lily pressed the letter to her chest, her tears falling onto the paper. The words sank deep into her heart. She looked back at the mirror, but Clara's reflection was gone. Only her own remained, but her eyes now held something new. Strength, purpose. She whispered softly, "I promise." The air around her shifted, warm and gentle, like the house itself had heard her vow. Outside, the clouds began to part, and sunlight poured into the grand hallway, scattering across the marble like liquid gold. Later that evening, Lily stood by the front door, watching the roses sway in the garden. She made a quiet decision. The house wouldn't stay silent anymore. It would become a shelter, a place for children who had nowhere else to go, for lost souls needing warmth and belonging. She picked up the old sign that once read Harrington Residence and replaced it with a new one, the House of Kindness. As she hammered the last nail in place, she felt the wind rise, carrying the scent of roses once more. She smiled through her tears, whispering to the breeze, "They're blooming again, Clara." And somewhere deep within the mansion, a faint laughter echoed, the laughter of a child at peace. The Harrington home had found its purpose again, and Lily Parker had found hers, because sometimes the smallest act of kindness can awaken an entire world waiting to love again. The Harrington mansion stood tall under the golden morning sun, its walls no longer whispering sorrow, but humming softly with life. Dust had settled for decades, but now it danced in the light as Lily opened each curtain, one by one. The air that once smelled of emptiness now carried a hint of fresh bread and soap. The echo of loneliness had finally been replaced with laughter, faint, new, but real. Weeks had passed since Lily found the mirror, the letter, and the truth. Every day since then, she had worked tirelessly, cleaning, repairing, painting, breathing life into every forgotten corner. The mansion that once mourned had become a heartbeat again, and at its center stood Lily Parker, the girl who once had nothing, now giving everything. She called it the House of Kindness, a place where children without homes could sleep in safety, eat in peace, and dream without fear. The first few children arrived shy, clutching small bags, eyes hollow with uncertainty. Lily knelt beside each one, meeting them eye to eye, saying softly, "You're safe now. This is home." The days grew longer, but sweeter. Lily taught them how to bake bread, how to plant roses in the garden, how to find joy in small things, like watching the sunset through stained glass or listening to rain on the rooftop. At night, they'd gather in the old library, where Lily read stories aloud by candlelight, her voice steady and warm. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right, she could swear she heard a child's laughter join theirs, Clara's. One rainy afternoon, as Lily arranged flowers in the foyer, the sound of footsteps echoed on the front porch. She opened the door and found a man standing there, in his early 40s, dressed in a worn coat, carrying a small bouquet of white roses. His eyes held a deep sadness, the kind that only time and loss could carve. "Can I help you?" Lily asked kindly. He smiled faintly. "You must be Miss Parker. I'm Daniel Harrington." Lily froze. The name hit like thunder. "Harrington?" He nodded. "Yes, Mrs. Evelyn Harrington was my grandmother. I didn't know anyone was still here until I received a letter from the estate lawyer. It mentioned you. Lily stepped aside to let him in. The old wooden floor creaked under his shoes, almost like the house remembered him. His gaze wandered across the hall, the glowing windows, the smell of freshly baked bread, the sound of children's laughter upstairs. He exhaled softly. It's different. I grew up visiting this place. It used to feel cold. Now, it feels alive. Lily smiled gently. That's what kindness does. Daniel's eyes fell on the framed letter hanging in the hall. Mrs. Harrington's final message. He reached out and traced the words with his fingers. Love never dies. It only changes hands. His voice broke. She always said that. He turned to Lily, emotion thick in his voice. Thank you for bringing her home back to life, for giving her legacy a heart again. Lily's eyes shimmered. She gave me everything when I had nothing. I'm just passing it on. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Warm, forgiving, sacred. Then Daniel placed the white roses on the mantel beside an old portrait of his grandmother and Clara. I think she would have loved what you've done, he whispered. Outside, the sky began to clear. The rain faded to mist, and sunlight streamed through the windows, casting soft gold across their faces. Later that night, Lily walked into the garden. The roses were blooming again, brighter than ever, red, pink, and white, their petals glistening with dew. She knelt down, touching one bloom gently, and whispered, "We did it, Clara." The wind stirred, wrapping around her like a quiet embrace. Somewhere deep in the house, faint music began to play. The old piano, untouched for years, now playing itself softly. And in that melody, Lily felt everything. The love of a woman she never met, the laughter of a girl long gone, and the echo of her own promise being kept. The Harrington mansion was no longer just a house. It was a soul reborn, and for the first time in a long time, so was Lily. The evening had settled softly over Willow Creek, wrapping the mansion in a hush of twilight. The last of the children had gone to bed, their laughter fading into dreams. Lily stood by the grand piano, closing its lid after the mysterious melody had played hours ago. The roses outside shimmered under the moonlight, and the air smelled faintly of rain and renewal. Just as she turned off the last lamp, there was a gentle knock at the door. 3 quiet taps. Hesitant, almost afraid. She frowned, surprised. No one visited this late. Pulling her shawl tighter, she walked to the door and opened it. Standing on the porch was a woman, mid-60s, dressed in a navy blue coat, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun. She carried an old leather handbag and looked exhausted, as if she had come from far away. But what caught Lily's attention most were her eyes, soft, familiar, full of something she couldn't name. "Miss Parker?" the woman asked in a trembling voice. "Yes," Lily replied gently. "Can I help you?" The woman hesitated before reaching into her bag and pulling out a small, worn photograph. She held it out with both hands, as if it were something sacred. "I think you should see this." Lily took it and froze. It was a picture of a young girl, maybe 8 years old, with tangled hair and a missing tooth, standing in front of a small diner. In the background, a familiar sign read Willow Creek Cafe. Her breath caught. This is me. "But how did you?" The woman smiled weakly. "I took that picture." Lily looked up, stunned. Who are you?" The woman's eyes glistened. "My name is Margaret Ellis. I used to work here, and for Mrs. Harrington, I was her housekeeper. But more than that, I was her friend, and I've been looking for you for a very long time." The room seemed to tilt. "Looking for me?" Margaret nodded, stepping inside slowly. Her hands trembled as she clutched her bag. "Years ago, Mrs. Harrington made me promise that if a girl ever came to town who reminded me of her daughter Clara, kind, selfless, and pure-hearted, I should make sure she found this house. She believed that some souls are connected, even through time." Lily's heart pounded. "But I didn't even know her." The old woman smiled sadly. "Oh, child, she knew you long before you ever came here." She opened her bag again and pulled out a folded letter. The paper yellowed, the ink faded. She handed it to Lily. "To my dearest friend Margaret, if one day you meet a girl with eyes like the morning sky, gentle but filled with strength, guide her to my home. I believe she is meant to heal what I could not. Clara's laughter may live again through her kindness, and perhaps through her, both our hearts will finally rest. Evelyn Harrington." Lily's tears spilled before she could stop them. She was waiting for me." Margaret nodded softly. "And now you're here. You've done everything she hoped for. You gave this place a second life." The two women stood in silence, the air thick with memory and meaning. The old clock ticked softly, and the scent of roses drifted through the open window. Then Margaret said something that made Lily's breath hitch completely. "You should know one more thing. You weren't a stranger to her, not really. When you were a child and your parents passed away, it was Mrs. Harrington who paid for your schooling at Willow Creek Orphanage. She wanted you to have the life her own daughter never got." Lily's hand flew to her mouth. She did that? Yes, Margaret whispered, her eyes full of warmth. You were her kindness returned to her. She just didn't live long enough to see it. The world seemed to go still. The fire crackled softly, painting the room in gold. Lily looked at the photograph again, the small girl smiling in front of the cafe, and then at the house that had once been full of ghosts, but now breathed with love. Tears fell freely as she whispered, she found me, even when I didn't know she was looking. Margaret placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Love always finds its way back home, dear. Outside, a soft wind stirred the garden, and the roses swayed as if bowing to an unseen presence. The piano hummed again, a single note, quiet and pure. And in that fragile silence, Lily felt it, a presence, warm and grateful, wrapping around her heart like a whisper from heaven. Spring came early that year to Willow Creek. The air smelled like renewal, the earth rich and alive after the endless rain. For the first time in decades, the Harrington mansion stood not as a shadow of the past, but as a living promise of everything good that love could leave behind. The house of kindness had grown. What began with just a few children had become a small community, laughter echoing through the halls, the scent of warm bread drifting from the kitchen, and tiny footsteps chasing sunlight across the floors. Every day, Lily felt the mansion breathe deeper, fuller, as though its very walls were rejoicing. But there was one thing left, one wish Lily had yet to fulfill. In Mrs. Harrington's final letter, there had been a line that never left her mind. Let kindness live here once more, and let the roses bloom forever. So Lily decided to host a gathering, not just for the children, but for the entire town. Anyone who had ever felt forgotten, lost, or unloved. She wanted the mansion to open its doors to the world again, to be what Mrs. Harrington had dreamed it could be, a home without walls. The day of the event arrived under a golden sky. The garden shimmered with dew, and hundreds of roses had blossomed overnight. Red, white, and soft blush pink, as if painted by unseen hands. The air was full of birdsong and laughter as neighbors, townsfolk, and even Daniel Harrington returned, bringing food, music, and memories. Lily wore a simple ivory dress. She stood at the top of the mansion steps, looking out at the sea of smiling faces, her eyes glistening. Children ran across the garden, their hands full of petals. Margaret stood beside her, tears in her kind old eyes. When the crowd quieted, Lily spoke, her voice trembling with warmth. Years ago, she began, I was just a girl who helped a stranger cross the road. I never knew that one small act of kindness would lead me here. To all of you, this house, it once stood in silence, waiting for love to return. Today, it stands in bloom because kindness came home. Her eyes lifted to the roses behind her, their colors glowing in the sunlight. Mrs. Harrington believed love never dies, it only changes hands. And she was right. Her love lives here, in every child's laughter, in every shared meal, in every heart that finds hope again. The crowd was silent, listening, some wiping tears. Daniel stepped forward, holding a single white rose. He placed it beside the old portrait of his grandmother that now hung in the foyer, surrounded by fresh flowers. She would have been proud, he whispered. As the sun began to set, Lily invited everyone to the garden. Together, they planted a final rose bush in the center, one that Lily had been saving for months. She knelt down, pressing her hands into the soil, whispering softly, This one's for you, Mrs. Harrington, and for Clara. A gentle breeze stirred, the same warm, rose-scented wind that had always seemed to arrive when love was near. The candles flickered, the petals trembled, and for a moment, Lily swore she heard the faint laughter of a child and the soft voice of a woman whispering thank you. When she stood, the sky was glowing pink and gold, and for the first time every rose in the garden bloomed together. A breathtaking sea of color stretched as far as the eye could see. Margaret gasped softly. The roses, they've never bloomed like this before. Lily smiled through her tears. She kept her promise. They're blooming forever. As the children danced in the fading light, Lily turned toward the mansion one last time. Its windows glowed warmly, like eyes full of gratitude. She could feel them. Evelyn and Clara, not as ghosts, but as guardians, woven into the air itself. The mansion had found peace. The roses had found light. And Lily, she had found home. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness doesn't just change a life. It rewrites destiny. And long after the guests left and the stars rose above the quiet garden, the house of kindness stood in silence once more. Not the silence of sorrow, but of fulfillment. And in that silence, if one listened closely, one could still hear it, the soft rustle of roses, blooming forever in gratitude.